Hey, good morning. I'm John Fitzgerald. I'm here with my partner, Michael Ardolino, and our very special guest, Tony Mercer, who's an attorney here on Long Island, practicing attorney for over 30 years, and going to give us some great insights on what's going on in the real estate market from an attorney's position. But I just want to welcome you to the Daily Blue and to Realty Connects.
You don't look like Corinne.
And I don't look like Corinne. And Corinne is in some vacation resort or off for the day.
It's a secret. It's a secret.
Secret rendezvous. I know her husband took her and the family away for a little unplanned vacation. So we're going to miss her today, but we're going to struggle through it somehow.
Well, I think we'll be okay, John.
I think the viewer audience might rather look at Corinne than the three of us, but we're going to have to deal with that.
For sure, no matter how she looks.
Yes, that's
I agree with you.
So, but I just want to remind our viewers, if there's a question, if you want to call in or text in or email us, the text number is 516-702-5406. The email is up on the screen. If you have a question, just call in or text in and we'll try to get it on the air live, especially if you have a question for Tony once we get to talking about real estate and his profession. So, and why don't we just actually do that?
Okay, we can go right into it.
Yeah, we really want to thank you for coming. I know that you've been a practicing attorney on Long Island for over 30 years. You're in the firm Glenn Mercer and Purcell. I think you're located in Suffolk County?
Right in Setauket on 25A.
Okay, but you practice Nassau, Suffolk, Queens, whatever real estate deals?
Based primarily, the real estate portion of our practice is based primarily in Suffolk and Nassau. We try not to get into the city because the practice of real estate is kind of local.
Okay. Okay, that makes good sense.
One of the advantages of using a local lawyer is that lawyer would be familiar with the different idiosyncrasies of that area.
And that makes great sense.
So you can't know everything in
Absolutely.
every area.
Yeah, and I actually, as a real estate professional, really appreciate that statement, because if you do a transaction with an attorney who takes a case that is, or takes a closing that he's unfamiliar with, it can be cumbersome and difficult to do that transaction. So that's a very professional way to look at it. And I like that.
That's a very good point, because quite often people choose an attorney and it's a family friend or it's someone that they know from another part of the island.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, with today's way that real estate is right now, we were talking a little bit offline, that with COs and variances and those little nuances, Tony, very simple sentence he just made, but it means a whole lot when it gets to getting that home in contract and closed, especially with the way the banks really dot the I's and cross the T's today. So that was a very good point.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Excellent. So I guess what our consumers are probably interested in knowing is what is the attorney's role, and how do you go about protecting them in a real estate transaction, and what takes place from the time, assuming that Michael or I or one of our agents brought a transaction into your office and you, representing a client obviously already set up, what takes place after we turn that transaction over to you?
Well, that's the point at which we start to take an active role, and truth be told, that's when our role begins in most cases. However, if you put a lot of importance on a real estate transaction, which most of us do when I'll go from a seller's perspective right now when we're selling a house. Sometimes it's prudent to engage the services of a lawyer even before that. And what we like to do is we like to meet with a prospective seller before the house is even listed, or at the same time the house is being listed, because what we'll do is we'll go over your paperwork that you have from when you bought. We'll make sure that we've got copies of your deed, your survey, your title insurance policy, and we'll go over your property with you, your survey with you, to see if you've got any potential problems that could take a while to get straightened out.
Yeah.
And that way, while your property is being marketed, we can be working on certain things that might have to be done, like we can tip you off that there is a deck or a portion of your property that might not be covered by a CO.
And how many
Yeah.
times, Tony, where you'll be at that step and you'll give us a call and say, gee, you know, that's a beautiful deck. I even took a drive over there. However, it's 9 inches bigger than when they bought it. And, oh, the fence, by the way, is about 3 feet onto the neighbor's property where they just put that beautiful little pond. And now we have to gently move that conversation and fix those issues.
Not the end of the world. These are fixable problems.
Yeah.
But like all kinds of problems like that, it's way easier and cheaper to fix it at your leisure as opposed to the week before the closing, or if you discover it just before you're supposed to close.
Yeah.
And that makes a world of difference, takes a lot of tension out of the situation, and as I said, it can be cheaper to do it on a more of a long-term basis.
Yeah, and I like that approach. That's a great approach because we run across that all the time with problems with, you know, somebody has this huge deck in the backyard and you ask if they have a permit for that and they go, do I need a permit? And right away, you know, there's a little bit of a problem.
Or the builder
Yeah.
said that they obtained a permit and they didn't.
Right.
So but it isn't anything, as we said, that we can't deal with. It's just a great deal easier to do it before you have your buyer there with their money in their hand ready to go.
Yeah.
And I have to say this, and a good real estate agent, and Realty Connect USA has really good agents. However, a really good agent is going to ask those questions at the very beginning step when they get the privilege of representing that property. They're going to engage that conversation. So when you hear your agent saying, can you get a hold of your COs, your survey, your tax bill, your deed, your death certificate, whatever it is that you have, let's get that so I can get it over to your attorney. And oh, by the way, why don't you give me your attorney now? Let's get that engaged so we can start to help.
Yeah, and that's a
very
great
important
point
step.
for us, for real estate agents, and I'm assuming it's the same for you. And we've known your firm for a long time, and we know how well you do, how professional you are. But to create relationships between the real estate folks and the attorneys and the inspectors and so on and so forth, and we talked a little bit off air on that. That's so important to get a deal to gel and to make everybody work in the same direction to get things to close.
If there's a secret to this, and I don't mean to make it mysterious, but if there's a secret to this or if there's a key to this, it's effective communication between all parties. So often you run into a snag in that area and it's a waste of everybody's time. It prolongs the situation and it delays problems being solved. So that if you've got some member of the team, as it were, that's not communicating effectively, it's a potential problem.
Oh yeah,
And
we've had that happen.
And the other way to look at this is that we're not in the era of $30,000 and $40,000 houses anymore.
That's right.
Like when my wife and I bought our first house, a delay in a closing of a few weeks can mean a couple of $1,000s more to the seller in carrying charges. Mm-hmm. So that time is money, especially now, and the more of these problems you get taken care of early, the quicker you're going to get closed,
Yeah,
and the cheaper it's going to be, because carrying charges are astronomical with property taxes and interest.
Absolutely,
and so forth.
absolutely.
yeah,
Property
very
taxes
true.
and interest rates, absolutely.
Is there anything, that's kind of that first step of being the buyers, the seller? Is there anything that the nuances that are different if you're a buyer when you're at the beginning steps and you haven't chosen a house yet? Or is that something that comes in later? Should they be engaged with an agent, with an attorney prior? Or should that come a little bit later on?
It's a little bit less critical if you're a buyer, but I always ask my buyers the first very important question: have you been to the bank yet? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's critical. How many of us, my wife and I, when we looked at our first houses, we had no clue what we could afford.
Yeah.
It was 100 years ago, but these days it's easy to go to a qualified loan person and get pre-approved. Mm-hmm. which will give you the answer to 2 out of the 3 factors that govern whether you're going to get financing or not. The financial factor, do you have enough money for the closing costs? Are you making enough money
Price range.
to afford whatever monthly payment? And the other factor is your credit. So you can get 2 out of the 3 factors taken care of by using an effective loan officer. Most of the time, a good broker will point you to that loan officer, but we make sure that
And
they've
then
done
you
that.
engage with, again, as those partners in the group, then if you have some involvement and you have the relationship also established with the loan officer or the bank, that makes things go smooth if a question comes up.
Certainly, because after the transaction gets into contract, we work very closely with the bank to monitor the progress of the loan application, and from time to time they'll need some supplementary paperwork like additional contract pages, amendments to the contract. They might need COs or whatever, and we make sure that gets there in short order. So that can be helpful as well.
So let's jump to the next piece. So now the seller is on the market, the buyers come to the table, and now they have an accepted offer. They move to inspection. The inspection is done. At what point do you think it's best? Realtors all have different opinions,
Sure.
so I'm purposely saying it this way. At what point do you think the attorney for the seller, or the buyer in this case, unless you want to break it, it's your call, should get engaged in that process?
Personally, I'm happy to be involved in that at that level. Some lawyers are reluctant to become involved because they don't want to go out on a limb and give their opinion about this is a serious problem, but this roof thing over here is not, or whatever. I do a lot of my own home maintenance, so I like to speak to clients about what I think things are going to cost if they engage the services of the contractor.
I get a kick out of Tony sometimes when he's handling a transaction for us, and something will come up with the plumbing or the roof or anything that has to do with the home. And Tony will say, oh, well, when I was in my X years, plumbing, this is what it really means. This is what they're doing. And, if the plumber's telling you this, why don't you look at it this? And he actually really knows.
Well, I've never really been a plumber, although I do my own plumbing, but I did roofing. So I do know a little bit about different things like that. But the bottom line is that you're a buyer or you're a seller. It's good to get different opinions about what these things are going to cost to remedy. No house is perfect.
Right.
They've all got little problems. But that's when the broker becomes involved to a great degree as well, and I've called you many times because there can be a number of problems with an inspection report. But you have to put it in context.
Yes.
If I'm getting this house at an unbelievably good price, maybe I'm not going to be so worried about this $2,000 or $3,000 worth of repairs that need to be done.
Yeah, the logic has to take place.
On the other hand, if I'm paying top dollar, maybe I have justification for being pickier about it.
Yes.
And these are questions that the average lawyer can't answer. I have no real feeling for when a transaction comes into my office, whether they're stealing the house
it's
or
a good price or not.
overpaying.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not sure what my own house is worth.
Yeah.
So you generally call a broker at that point and you say, where are we in the spectrum?
Yes.
Is this a good deal? Should we be asking for these repair items to be taken care of? Or?
So at that point, then the takeaway here is back to relationships. If the relationship's already established, Tony, and we now have 5 items that have come up, and of the 5 items, 3 are real, the other 2 we kind of sort of want, that's where we're looking at what price did we pay for this, what's really fair, how do you think that will work? Because the goal is to sell the house and the buyer to buy it and be compromising together. And again, it gets down to how we all approach it.
Yeah, that happens all the time. I do a lot of bank foreclosure work.
Sure.
So I'll get an attorney who calls me back and says, my clients are going to sign this document because all my contracts at time is of the essence. none of them are on or about dates. And that's a peril for the clients.
It is indeed.
Because if they
Yeah.
don't close,
Sure.
then they have their down payment in jeopardy.
Theoretically, you have
Yeah.
a flat tire on the way to the closing, you could have a problem.
You could jeopardize,
So
and it works both ways.
Yes, it
It
does.
works for the buyer. If the buyer shows up and the seller doesn't, then that time is of the essence
Yeah,
is a problem.
although it's
Yeah.
more onerous for a buyer.
Much,
It's,
much, yeah.
you've got your-
So then it goes back to your comment that is this really a good deal? If I'm saving $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 on the purchase of, of the house, will I take the risk? And on top of that, most banks aren't looking for litigation. They're looking
Sure.
to clear that liability. It's not even an asset. Once it goes to foreclosure, it becomes a liability on their books. They want to clear it off,
Sure.
and they want to move to the business they're in, which is instituting or initiating mortgages, not owning property.
Sure.
Yeah, so that
But-
becomes an issue. So that's really good to have a really good attorney on the other side of that, so that you can speak to the broker and he could say, well, what's the savings, what's the deal, what's going on with the property, who's
Yep.
the bank, and then you can really, but a number of attorneys will just say, nah, deal's done. And I can understand them protecting their client, but also if the client's saving $100,000 on the purchase of the property, that should have some consideration in the conversation.
Well,
So if you
those
don't
are-
talk to the broker,
Those are decisions
Yeah.
that in my opinion, and the way we work it in our office, those are not my decisions.
Correct.
Those are the
Right, yeah,
client's
yeah.
decisions. My job
Yeah.
is to make sure that when a client is presented with options, that they understand the ramifications of each of the options and they understand the pros and cons, but then they make the decision.
and that's great.
And,
That's the way it should
and that's
be.
not, because it's not my money, it's their money, and it's
Exactly.
not going to be my house, it's going to be their house. And
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm just the guide for this as opposed to the decision maker.
Yeah, we go through this also, and Michael will testify to this, in certain situations where there might be a divorce, and we have now 3 attorneys. We have one representing the seller, one representing the wife, one representing the husband. And so how difficult is that for an attorney to handle that kind of communication?
Well, funny you should bring that up. We find ourselves as the middle lawyer in matrimonial actions quite frequently. Probably more than a lot of other law firms. We have a policy in that regard, and that is that we need to communicate effectively with both of the matrimonial lawyers, and we really like to have everything in writing prior to the closing. We've had situations at closings where I've been on the other side of the table representing a buyer, and the sellers were in the midst of a divorce, and one refuses to sell or to sign the deed until their soon-to-be ex-spouse gives them custody of the Great Dane.
Yeah.
I
I've
wanted
seen
the
some of
dog,
those,
and
yeah.
now we're here at the closing, and I'm not going to sign until you give me the dog.
Yeah,
That actually happened, by the way.
I believe it.
Dog.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Did you get the dog?
Well, we sort of cooler heads prevailed, but the potential is there for that.
Yes.
So it's good to get everything decided beforehand, which is really a kind of a byword or a watchword for any closing. If you know that there's going to be a potential problem, you really are better off getting it ironed out beforehand.
Yes.
If everybody does their
Very true.
job, then you can go to the closing and you talk about your kids, and the lawyers will tell lawyer jokes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if there's a conflict, it's most
Do
often.
you have a good lawyer joke for us before we...
My kids have those jokes. If there's a problem at a closing, it's not guaranteed, but if there's a problem at a closing, it can generally be traced back to some issue not being resolved beforehand.
Yeah.
And there's unfortunately no shortcut but
Go ahead.
No, go.
No, I was just relating to that story because once I did have a closing where I guess the divorce wasn't going so well, and the buyer's attorney and the buyer were in one room, and the seller's, the husband's attorney was in one room, and the
Right.
wife and her attorney were in another room. And
Not
we had to bring the
uncommon.
documents to this
Yep.
room, then take them over to that room, get them signed,
wanna
and then
sit
bring them back.
together?
They wouldn't stay in the same room with
sometimes
each other.
yeah.
Yeah, and so we had to go into 3 different rooms to get the documents signed, and you know how many pieces of paper there are at a
Sure,
closing.
sure.
And that was interesting, but it finally did close, But
Look, I want to move into a whole other area for a moment, if we could.
sure.
New construction. different way to approach new construction as a buyer or a seller? What do you recommend to someone, whether it's a modest home or a very expensive home? How do you see that? Because that's a longer relationship. Are they buying the land first? Are they building the house? What is it that's going to be in the house? All those little steps, when they're sitting they see the land, and then they sit with the builder and the broker, and everybody's happy, and we're going to get, we're going to have, lavender floors and granite, and then the contract comes.
Yep.
And take us through that little, because I always find that interesting.
Well, it's about as different from buying an already constructed house as you can get, because there's nothing there when you sign a contract. And if you're fortunate enough to be dealing with a situation where there are a number of model homes, you can look at the model home carefully, and you can be pretty sure, or we use that as a benchmark, that the builder will build a house in accordance with this model.
At least we know this is what it looks like.
This is going to be the dimensions, and then our house will depart from the model home in the following ways. So that's maybe not so bad, but to just have a set of plans and
we've been here,
been through that, and it's at the same time it's probably one of the most satisfying experiences, because you're getting exactly what you want, and in many cases you had a role in designing different aspects of the house.
Yeah.
So it's a
custom
great
done.
experience.
You pick your tiles, you pick this, you pick your wood floors, you pick your
Absolutely,
cabinets.
it's
great.
your house.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. But
the communication with the attorney, and this is going to be a realtor's opinion here, and if you would go further on this, in my experience, and I'll use you as a perfect example, there's where I, as a realtor, and we've done construction where it's woods, and when we're done, there's going to be a 4,300 square foot custom built home. And we're looking at woods. We're about to go, we're going to buy the land, then we're going to buy the house, then we're going to pick the contractor.
Yep.
As a realtor, again, you're choosing your partners. I think that Tony, the attorney, should be in very early to the party, because there's a lot of players.
Yeah.
And if you would just expand on that, because here we are, and use an example. I looked at the garage doors in this one house that's being built right now, and they're not high enough, and they're not wide enough, and the building is there. It doesn't matter what was on the plans. It doesn't matter what the architect
It's already done.
well, it wasn't done, but it was framed, and
and it's not right.
Now it's got to
So-
be fixed.
We're communicating with you, the buyer. It doesn't matter which one of us. He goes to the job sites all the time, but I want you to go there a little bit, if you would just explain how that whole thing.
Well, the reward of having a house that's exactly what you want and what you designed is significant. It's a wonderful thing, but the price of that is constant vigilance.
Right.
And
With all the players.
anybody will tell you that even with the best builder, you've got to constantly be watching what's happening. If you've got your lawyer in your corner and your broker in your corner, in addition to you, then you've got additional eyes that will watch the situation.
Yeah.
But as was explained to me a long time ago, you can have the best of everything else, and if you get a builder with a questionable reputation, it's going to be a disaster. If you get the right builder, as they've said, if you got the right people, you don't need lawyers. And if you got the wrong people, all the lawyers in the world are not going to help you. And so quite often,
we've been on both sides of that.
a broker and a lawyer can be instrumental in guiding a buyer to potential builders that have good reputations, as opposed to ones that have not so good reputations.
Yeah.
And even after that, going there, being engaged, staying involved.
Yeah. So it's great that the way you get involved with your clients and the things you do are fabulous. I mean, we've worked with your firm. We know you have a great reputation. If you need a great real estate attorney, Glenn Mercer and Purcell, this is Tony Mercer. He's fantastic. The phone number's on the screen. You can call him interview them. They're a great firm to use for your real estate closing. And my producer's telling me we're going to wrap this show up, so I want to thank you so much for being
love
with
to have
us.
you back
it
on,
was
Tony, 'cause
fantastic,
Thanks
and
very
we
much
only
for
covered
asking me.
a small amount of all the great things that
barely
you guys
scratched
do.
the surface,
Yep.
but
Yeah.
it's been enjoyable.
Wonderful.
And again, I want to remind our viewers, if you have a question, you can email, call in, or text us at 516-702-5406. And I also want to remind you about a Realty Connect event. We have a huge open house event coming up that's going to be May 3rd and May 4th.
All over Suffolk County.
All over Suffolk County and parts of Nassau, I believe. But this is a huge event for Suffolk County. There'll be so many open houses. If you're interested in purchasing a house, we're going to make it so easy for you. Just get your car and drive from house to house, and you'll be able to see everything that's available in Suffolk County. It's a great Realty Connect event. So mark your calendar on the 3rd and the 4th of May. And if you need a great attorney, if you're selling your house, give Tony a
Mercer.
call. All right? And we want to thank you for tuning in. And I believe next week, Corinne will be back for our show. And
We'll see if she
you'll
has
have
a
a much
tan,
better
not have a
looking
tan.
host on the show than I am. And again, Tony, it was fantastic
Tony.
having you
Well,
here.
Thank you very
And we
much.
appreciate everything. So,
Thanks for asking me.
Thank you.
If you have a real estate question, send us an email at realtyconnectsli@gmail.com or text us at 516-702-5406, and we'll answer your question live on Realty Connects Long Island. Our first listing this week is a charming expanded cape at 10 Beseelan Road in Bellport Village, listed at $372,500. It features a 3-season sunroom and a great room, including a beautiful fireplace with a handcrafted floor-to-ceiling cherry mantle. Village amenities include country club, golf, tennis, and private beaches. Call Nancy Vigna for more details at 631-881-4171. Next, we have a gorgeous 4-bedroom colonial with a beautifully landscaped yard at 72 Miller Avenue in Port Jefferson Station. On for just $374,000, this home boasts an updated eat-in kitchen leading into a bright sunroom. Additional features include hardwood floors, central air, and an in-ground sprinkler system. For more info, call Rebecca Luke at 631-941-6258. Here we have a 3-bedroom cape priced at $389,000, located at 48 West Belterre Avenue in Lindenhurst. A rare find, this legal 2-family home is perfect for first-time homebuyers or investors and features a formal living room with fireplace. Contact Stephen Calapai today at 631-881-4071. 78 Nichols Road in Nesconset is our next listing up for $389,000, and not only is it beautifully landscaped, but it's larger than most high ranches. With a private backyard, it's perfect for relaxing or entertaining with a brick patio and wooden deck. Call Nancy Vargas Johnson for more information at 631-533-9060. Liz Record, our newest member at Realty Connect USA, has a new listing on 79 Norman Drive in Bohemia, listed for $399,000. This spacious 3-bedroom ranch boasts an open floor plan, a custom-built stacked slate fireplace, in-ground sprinklers, and an 18 by 36 in-ground pool. Liz can be reached at 631-533-9343. This next listing comes to us from East Northport at 4 Ilsa Court, on for $412,000. A well-maintained 3-bedroom ranch with updates including windows, bathrooms, and an eat-in kitchen, and also features including hardwood floors, central air, and a stunning wood deck leading to the above-ground pool. Call Betty Davenport for more information at 631-223-7778. Completely renovated, this mint 4-bedroom splanch is move-in ready, featuring a formal dining room, formal living room, and family room with fireplace. Updates include 2 new baths, a new eat-in kitchen, new appliances, and windows. Call Nyla Ashraf for more details on 259 Cedar Road in East Northport at 631-881-5167. Ellen Basile, who has also recently joined Realty Connect USA, has this new listing at 5 Supreme Court in Smithtown, priced at $619,000. It's a 14-year-old postmodern with a great floor plan featuring a double staircase in the entry foyer, center aisle kitchen, and a full finished basement with a full bath. Call Ellen today at 631-881-4395. Also priced at $619,000, we have another postmodern at 8 Maple Lane in Miller Place, listed by Rick Ledoux. With a very open floor plan, this home has vaulted ceilings, a second-floor great room overlooking the living room with fireplace, and boasts a heated, in-ground saltwater pool with spa and waterfall. Call Rick for more details at 631-706-4564. Our last listing for the day is a diamond colonial on 7 Water's Edge Court in Babylon, listed at $659,000. It has a wood-burning brick fireplace, hardwood floors throughout, a new kitchen with porcelain tile, and deeded docking rights for a 40-foot boat. Call Laura Zanakis and Marie Paterna at 631-881-4403. Contact a Realty Connect USA agent today, connected to over 19,000 available listings on Long Island. If there's a home out there for you, we'll find it.